get into the subject.
How do we better engage learners of today? What have you noticed about Gen Z and Gen Alpha versus millennials, boomers, Gen X? There's a lot of differences. The iPhone has been part of their entire lives. What an incredible invention from Steve Jobs, but it forever changed how we engaged the physical world. And of course, we could say that's bad or good. And, I'm here to always be apolitical and agnostic. Totally understand there's so many layers of gray to these things and how they exist in the world today. But what I want to challenge us on is, what is the facts? What are the factual pieces of society? Social media is extremely prevalent. All of you have to deal with social in a different way. Maybe a parent complains on Twitter. Maybe a Facebook group has an idea of how we can better engage your students. Social media affects our day-to-day lives, whether we want to engage with it or not. Video is the preferred methodology for folks to be able to search. I can promise you, and we'll go through the data shortly, your students go to YouTube and TikTok over Google. They go to YouTube and TikTok. Those are the search engines now. What a different world we live in. Do we all remember Ask Jeeves and some of these other sites, right? Those are great. They were entertaining. Search used to be a battle and then Google won out. Well, now we're going through video. YouTube, Instagram to a lesser extent. We live digital lives. All of our students today also had 2 years on the sidelines, and that's going to persist for the next 15 years. All of these students that were in the COVID era, they were stuck in their rooms at their house. They were only interacting with their siblings, parents, maybe their grandparents if they were lucky enough, depending on the situation, precautions taken. They were engaging over Discord, video games, social media. And so not only are they fluent and digital natives, it's now their preferred methodology. And again, we're here to say the facts. We're not here to say if it's good or bad. I definitely miss, and I'm thankful for my own high school experience, getting to play outside, meet friends in person. It's a special part of life, and we all agree with that. But these kids are digital natives, and so that is the harsh truth we're going to lean in today. Video is the fluency of the modern day learner. So how can we be better about student-centered learning approaches? How are these metrics behind us happening? And again, test scores, very polarizing. Many universities went away with them, made them optional. We have noticed several bringing them back. Dartmouth, Yale, and Brown, for instance, in the Ivy League, just required a testing requirement again in the last couple of weeks. Duke, for instance, they completely abolished written essays now for submitting to college because so many kids were cheating or doing it. Yeah, they're doing AI. Exactly. ChatGPT, you're submitting an essay that you didn't write one bit of it. How do I check? The more funding that's gone into education, and specifically ed tech, the worse test scores have become. Why is that? We're trying to talk about engagement here and have a very passionate, collaborative discussion. All these SIS, LMS integrations, while so powerful and have helped a lot of admin hours, are they truly consumer facing? Do the kids care about what the integration on the back end of your gradebook is? And not denouncing how important it is to help the administration work smoothly, but how are these students actually benefiting from some of the investments in education? What over the last 2 decades has truly made it to the customer-facing aspect of education? And who is our customer together? It's these young leaders we're trying to help perpetuate a better life. Whether it's going to college, directly into the workforce, how can we help them have a more fulfilling adult life where they can be a positive contributing member of society? We all share that mission together. Yet a lot of the funding in the education has not gone towards the student. What are some reasons behind that? When you were a child, and we all here were passionate about education, so maybe there was some outliers here, so please feel free to call me out or correct me. When you were a child, chances were you were not going up to your principal shouting about how you should be taught. Kids don't have much agency over their education. It's looked at as a chore, a job, something I have to do every day. The chances of your students going out and about to be able to demand a different way to learn are very, very minimal. And so it's on us, those in positions of power, the ability to educate, administrate, teach those classes to think differently about engaging students. Let's walk back a couple centuries ago to 1900. What was the teaching methodology? Very lecture-based Prussian learning method. And it has a time and a place. And again, society is constantly evolving. I always say, if you aren't looking back 6 to 12 months and cringing at what you're doing, you're not growing fast enough. So maybe 2-3 years from now, we'll look back at this discussion and say, wow, That's already outdated because we're growing that fast. But in the education world, that has not been the case to date. Many things have stayed consistent. Many pieces of the in-classroom experience has not changed. Could you imagine 50 years ago, someone telling you, hey, you can click a button on this cell phone, this piece of electronic, and get in a car ride with a stranger? Who would let you get in a car with a stranger you've never heard of before in your life? And now Uber is a modern day commonplace. What about Airbnb? 20, 30 years ago, hey, you could go rent a stranger's house and have the best weekend of your life. They would call you crazy. What are you doing? That's not the way to, go on a vacation. You have to stay at a hotel. Those are technological revolutions. And that's what we need to do here together. We need to engage our students with technology. We need to spend on technology that further engages the student. If they're growing up on the iPhone, and I challenge us all, I do this a lot on my own phone, look at your screen time over the last couple of days and what apps were the most. I promise you there's at least one social app in there, even if it's a very adjacent social app, even like Spotify, for instance, where you can connect with other people, where you're spending 30, 40 minutes a day, and probably longer. If these kids are doing that with Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and then we're throwing them to an hour-long lecture with minimal supports, it is going to be more difficult for them to remain engaged. And so we challenge the whole space to say, hey, more money is going into education than ever before. Education is the second highest spend of our GDP sector after healthcare. Healthcare number one, education number two. What's the ROI? What is the outcome? It can't be this. And so let's figure that out together, how we can be better. And so we really believe it's around student-centered learning, being able to better understand Gen Z's preferences. Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Anyone know what Gen Alpha is yet? They really believe the digital fluency changed at the younger part of the millennial generation. So the millennial is commonly thought of as 1981 through 1996 birth years. Those of the older millennial generation, so the early and mid 80s, they came up in a largely non-digital world. Facebook, Twitter, Netflix, those were all brought to the forefront at the end of their high school or early college experience. Every generation past there, so younger millennials and then Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they have grown up with this world. I mean, how many of your districts have you sometimes connect within a Facebook group or something along those lines? When I went to UCLA for my MBA, one of the first parts of the acceptance letter, and this was, 5, 6 years ago now, is, hey, join this Facebook group so you can meet your classmates. That would never happen, a couple of decades ago. Gen Z loves hanging out online. They love being able to be anonymous. Does anyone know what doxing is? People want to be anonymous and private. That's a very hot topic, doxing and exposing folks behind a camera that want to just be anonymous and engage without bias, judgment, prejudice. These kids, and we found very deeply with subject, for instance, we used to do the live tutoring hours where you could join via Zoom meeting and engage with our teachers, our credentialed California instructors. And we found that kids hated it. They don't want to show their face. They feel embarrassed. One of the few pieces we discuss here as well is, video games versus education. I'm actually not an avid gamer whatsoever. It's been probably 10 plus years since engaging in any type of video game. But one thing that games get really right is if you fail, you could start over again and keep trying. In school, if you have to go seek out office hours or tutors, you're scorned. You're viewed from your peers as someone who doesn't understand, who isn't able to keep up with the intellectual horsepower of some of your classmates. What kind of environment is that for a student to take chances and risk and learn from failures? We all here have gone through our own personal failures. I have failed many, many times, and I continue to make mistakes daily. But how fast you learn from mistakes and failure is how you will end up bettering yourselves as a young person and as an adult. And so we would love to be able to encourage more of our students to make mistakes, to fail. And so many times in an asynchronous environment, in an anonymous environment, that captures more of that mentality of, hey, it's okay if you don't get it the first time. When you leave our high school, are you a better student and better citizen than when you started? If so, we are building future leaders of society. We are building future team members of society. It is okay to make a mistake, but students do not like attaching their brand and their face to those types of scoring opportunities. And so it's really important for us to understand that from a Gen Z-centric standpoint.